podcasts. Welcome back to the Probably True Crime podcast. This is part 2 of our True Crime Book Club series. And with me today again, I have Mille.
Hi.
Flavia.
Hey.
And Laura.
Hello.
And of course, I am your host, Michala. So last time we talked about the books and what they're about and sort of went through that. So we really recommend that you go back and listen to part 1 of this series. Today we'll be taking a closer look on what makes a true crime story and where is the line between truth and fiction. And in this, there's a really important element called new journalism. So Laura, can you sort of take us through that? Explain what is that about?
Absolutely. So new journalism is a non-fiction genre that emerged in the 1960s and 70s in America. And it's right as Truman Capote was working on his novel In Cold Blood, which he then released in 1965. So new journalism is a genre that mixes journalism with elements of the fiction genre. So Capote was at this point already a very well-known and established author, and then he went out to the scenes of the crime in the town, and he interviewed and spoke with people both living in the town, but also the murderers. And with that, he took his journalistic reporting and mixed it with fiction elements like dialogue, point of view, and personal voice. This creates empathy in readers and engages them with the true crime story. Mm-hmm. This, of course, also leads to a fair amount of criticism, as it's not as accurate or as objective as traditional journalism is. Furthermore, Capote, by interviewing these people, were also involved with them and gained relationships, or personal relationships, to one of the 2 murderers, Perry Smith, which makes the reader have a clear, sympathetic view of Perry Smith and less so of the other murderer, Dick Hickok.
So this is sort of a more creative way to do journalistic reporting. So last time when we talked about Helter Skelter, it reminds me now that sort of makes sense in this case as well, right, Flavia?
Yes. What's interesting in Helter Skelter, I remind you, was written by Vincent Bugliosi in 1974, is that the author of the book is also the prosecutor in the case. The narrative he uses involves reporting the information as very factual, and he uses this authoritarian and trustworthy voice. So you would say that it's kind of new journalism with a lower level of fictionalization. But it is exactly the role of Bugliosi in the case that makes his narrative biased. His main objective is to present the motive that he found behind the murders, so the Helter Skelter theory, as logical, which was a necessity for him, as there was a lot of speculation around the case. But for the readers of this book, it's some sort of a limit, as they're not provided with an holistic portrayal of the murderer's madness, their ideas, the dynamics of the Manson family, due to basically a juridical bias, which is also the most criticized aspect of this book.
Yeah, and speaking of narratives that has been highly criticized, I have once again brought Amityville Horror by J. Anson.
Great segue.
The novel, thank you. The novel was published in 1977, and it's really a novel where the narrative is constantly challenging the reader's perception of truth and fiction and what is actually going on. So briefly, it's obviously based on the testimony of the Lutz family that moves into this alleged haunted house. So we have George Lutz, Catherine Lutz, and their 3 children, Christopher, Daniel, and Missy. And what's so interesting is that there are definitely things about this narrative that we do know are true. For example, when the Lutz family moved in, that they actually owned the house, that they moved out at some point, and so on and so forth. We also know that a murder was committed in the house a year before. But then we have all of this paranormal activity where we're definitely missing like direct evidence. There are no one besides the Lutz family and an anonymous Catholic priest that has seen anything in this house since. What is interesting though in like the narrative structure is that they use real details from the court case of the murder that happened a year before they moved in to sort of support these claims of paranormal activity. So that, for example, can be that George Lutz claims to awake in the middle of the night, the exact time that the murders of the Defoe family was committed a year prior. Something that is sort of leans towards more of a fictional thing is that William Weber, who is the defense attorney of Ronald Defoe, the murderer, He claims that this was all a hoax, that he, together with the Lutz family, created this narrative in order to sort of support his case and for them to earn some money. So there's like something dragging both ways, or like pushing the narrative both ways. One thing that's quite interesting about, because it becomes a huge success, this novel, and the American public really engages with it and accept this narrative to a certain degree, and it still is perceived as a haunted house. And one of the reasons for this is, among others, the Exorcist, the movie that had come out in 1973 and had sort of brought to the American conscience this idea of haunted things, exorcism, and how Catholicism is in some way connected to this and able to pull out evil spirits from houses and other material and people as well in The Exorcist, now that I'm thinking about it. To bring back, it makes total sense that the American public was so open to this narrative in the first place. Something that's also very present in the narrative is this idea of financial stress. The Lutz family are clearly under a lot of financial stress, and maybe when you look back at this narrative, this novel is not about them being haunted by paranormal activity, but maybe rather being haunted by a house that they couldn't afford, this house that at this point was the materialization of the American dream.
Very great point. Okay, so that's really interesting, and I think it's a really good point with the American dream. But Laura, is that a thing in Cold Blood as well?
Absolutely it is. We have the Clotter family, which is the family that was murdered in the novel. Mr. Clotter is very much a representation of the American dream. He is someone who made it. He came from nothing, and then he managed to get wealth and a loving family, just like in Amityville Horror. And according to the town, they're also a representation of the town's values, the values of a white Christian family, as they are. However, the fictional aspect which Capote kind of brings in is the fact that there are cracks in this American dream. It looks perfect from the outside, but then we have the mother who is mentally ill and the son who is antisocial. And the whole issue of, the haunting of economics, they are murdered because they have money and someone wants to get money. And then, of course, we also have the fictional aspect of the American dream is in Perry Smith, who is a person of color who never stood a chance in achieving the American dream. For him, it's not a dream, it is pure fiction. The dream wasn't made for colored people, which Capote highlights how it's fiction through how Smith doesn't stand a chance.
That's interesting. Also in Helter Skelter, definitely the victims in this case represent the American dream due to their Hollywood lifestyle. So their murders is definitely an instance of broken American dream. But that's interesting because also in Helter Skelter, the victims definitely represent the American dream due to their Hollywood lifestyle. So their murders are definitely an instance of broken American dream. But in the brief victims' biographies that Bugliosi incorporates in the book, we can see that in their lives there's some sort of tension, some cracks. So this ideal lifestyle is not that perfect. And I also wanted to say that I think in this book it's not just the American dream to be broken, but also the hippie dream. The hippie dream to create a new kind of family, of community that contrasts with the traditional family is definitely broken in this case. And also the hippie environment that surrounds this story, I think it facilitated Charles Manson in pursuing his violent purposes, as it was sadly easy to find fragile and easy to manipulate young people that left their homes to join communes, and also people like Charles Manson would not stick out in that context as it was full of cult leaders. So there are definitely two broken dreams in this story.
Okay, that's really great, you guys. So less of an actual American dream or a dream, but more of a nightmarish reality. So sad. Okay, so let's just have a quick word from our sponsors and we'll see you after the break.
There is a cut.